Welcome to the Advanced RPO podcast, Advancing Talent Acquisition. Our guest today is Victoria Hill, Director of Diversity and Social Impact at Advanced Group. And I am very fortunate to be able to call Victoria a colleague. We've worked together for several years, and I think she brings a lot to the table, and I'm really excited to have her as a guest on the podcast. So welcome, Victoria, and will you tell us a little bit about your background before we get started?
Thank you. Hello. So thanks for having me, Jenna. My background is very unique in the sense that I started off thinking I wanted to be a computer programmer. And luckily, I didn't stick with that because my personality is more about people. And so I went into human resources and got a master's in that so that I could really impact people, human beings, right? And then several years ago, I moved into still HR, but moved into the diversity and social impact space. So that's where I am now, leading our diversity efforts for the organization.
Great. So our topic today is DEI in the hot seat. And I want to preface this by saying this is not a political conversation. At the same time, we on this podcast really like to take topics and things that are happening in real time and discuss them, have an honest conversation about what is happening in the world today. So with that, if you could give us the true definition of DEI. I feel like this is misunderstood. The term has evolved over time. And I think in this climate that we're in today, people can have one understanding of it and people can have another understanding of it. And if you could just give us what's the real definition of DEI?
Sure. Yeah. And you're definitely right. DEI is very often misunderstood, but DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let's start with the definition of the D, like in diversity. It literally means all. And anyone who hears me train at any point hears me say that every single time. Diversity means all. So diversity is every single one of us. Diversity is our identity, where we're from, who we are. It's also cognitive, right? So it's about our perspectives and how we think. And then when you think about the E, equity is really giving everyone what they need to be successful. And so I like to think about it like a marathon when you're racing to the finish line. Now, I'm not a runner at all. So I would need a whole lot of training, maybe a year or more. I don't know how long it would take, but with the shape I'm in, it would probably take a little bit longer. I'd also probably need a lot of prayer because that's not something I'm good at. But with all the right tools, I could do it, right? So I would need a trainer, etc., right? And so equity, if we think about it, it's about giving people what they need to be able to get to that finish line. So everyone doesn't need the exact same things. Some people need something a little bit different. And that's what equity is about, giving them what they need to reach that finish line or that goal. And then the I, which is inclusion, simply put, it means everyone in and no one out. So it's everyone being empowered, engaged, and enabled, right? So bringing your whole self to work, you probably hear that a lot, but bringing your whole self to work and really having your voice heard, that's that I, that's the inclusion, and that's for everyone.
I love that you say everyone when you talk about diversity and then obviously inclusion. It's not leaving a certain group or a certain perspective out. It's everyone. So it's something that everybody should care about, no matter who you are. I love that you said that. And I think it's really a perspective that people don't hear often. So thank you for sharing that. What specific actions or policies are being targeted in DEI in today's climate?
So, well, this is funny. Yesterday, I was talking to Pam Veerhoff, our president and CEO, and she mentioned this quote, and I really wanted to share it today. She said, "We often fear what we don't understand." And that is so true. I think that the letters DEI are really misunderstood, like we said. People don't really know what they mean. And so lately we've been seeing pushback on certain DEI efforts, like eliminating DEI focused roles or removing training programs. We've also seen like restricting of funding in certain initiatives. they may be pushing back on race, gender, equity, things like that that's being discussed in the workplace.
It's really kind of taken on its own identity. And that's where it gets like people who don't understand it from its foundation have to kind of take a step back and say, what is this? Am I giving it a personality that really isn't part of what this is? Am I hearing it from someone else's perspective and jumping on that? So I love to be able to break it down and understand what parts of it are being looked at or being targeted. So thank you. And then how do these actions, so the actions we talk about that are being targeted, how do these actions impact the work environment and employee morale? Again, we're talking about everybody. So when we talk about impact in an organization, it's any person who works in an organization.
Any person, everyone. And so in general, when DEI efforts are rolled back or questioned, it causes a sense of fear or frustration for all employees, right? It affects trust and can make people feel like they really don't belong at that organization. And, saying that, I'm happy to share that, our company, Advance RPO, we continue to move forward with our commitment to an inclusive culture. And that's really what probably most organizations want, right? They want an inclusive culture. They just don't know how to get there without being in that hot seat that you mentioned. And so, Advanced RPO, we prioritize, right? Creating that work environment that's kind of grounded in respect and understanding. And that's what all employees want. But when things are, rolled back or we see some of that, people start feeling like, what is this? So there's a fear that they won't be seen or supported anymore or even valued, right? So we have to foster that space where everyone can feel like they belong.
And it's like, what else is coming? So if you're pulling back on certain areas of DEI, people don't know what to expect next. And so it creates, as you've said, that sort of that fear and misunderstanding and what it all is about at its core. What are some potential consequences for organizations that don't prioritize DEI today?
Similar to the last question, when organizations don't prioritize DEI, they risk creating these environments where people feel really invisible, right? Or undervalued or disconnected from their work, quite frankly. So employees who don't feel seen or appreciated for their true identity, because it's cognitive diversity, right? So if they're not appreciated, then they're less likely to be engaged fully, right? They're less likely to be innovative or loyal. They may jump from company to company when things are not prioritized. And so over time, this can lead to higher turnover, lower morale, and missed opportunities to build really collaborative and high performing teams. So we always say this, but DEI really isn't just a nice to have. It's essential for long-term success and a thriving culture, especially in our line of work. DEI is easy to say and roll off the tongue, but it's better probably if we say the words diversity, equity, and inclusion so that people really understand what organizations are trying to do.
Yeah. And I agree. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. How do you not have that? And when organizations are rolling back certain parts of that and not really explaining why, if there's a reason why something is changing within DEI, at least explain to employees what the reasoning behind that is so that there's understanding and it's not just creating a line in the sand where it's like we're either for this or we're against it. It's all of us are in the same boat. What are some effective strategies for promoting DEI initiatives in the face of opposition? So there's a lot of, as we've said, it's in the hot seat. And there's companies that are very passionate about it in one direction or the other. What can you do to sort of be mainstream and keep that going and make that really about everybody, what we've been talking about since the beginning of this conversation?
Yes, and I have so many ways, but I'll sum it up with a few. But first and foremost, I think companies should reaffirm their commitment to building diverse teams, creating equitable opportunities, and ensuring that everyone feels that true sense of belonging. Even in the face of resistance, right? Staying grounded in our values. That's what's key. And like you said earlier, it's important to share the why. All right. Why diversity, equity, and inclusion matter. And not just for one group, but for everyone. DEI, it strengthens our culture. And if we could just make sure everyone understands how it strengthens the culture and how it drives innovation, I think that's key. That's part of our values, right? And that helps us to be able to thrive. And I think we can also train and encourage our leaders at every level to model those inclusive behaviors and speak up about the importance of DEI. This isn't just for the CEO, the executive team. This is for all leaders at every level, right? So if we can get everyone being vocal and authentic about their support, it would set the tone for the entire organization. Another thing I think is our mission statements, right? So companies' mission statements should clearly reflect, the belief about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? What we want in our culture. It should be reflected in our mission statement and in our branding, right? So when we brand our organizations, we need to make sure we have diverse voices and faces and stories. And again,
Yes.
when I say diverse, that means everyone,
Everybody.
right? And then also create safe spaces for dialogue. And so, as you know, Jenna, we have something here at Advanced RPO that we call Culture Conversations, where we invite all of our staff, if they can, to join us and have safe conversations on various topics, right? And we always say we leave political out of the conversation. We just want to hear from our people about what's impacting them. And then finally, I told you I could talk about this all day, but
No,
finally,
I love it. These are so good. These are so good.
yeah, I mean, and it's practical, right? And so
Yes.
we shouldn't shy away. I mentioned this earlier, and I'll say it often, but we shouldn't shy away from saying the actual words: diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the
Yes.
letters alone might not resonate with everyone, but the meaning behind them can connect with people on a deeper human level. So I think those are a few things we can put into practice, but I have more. If we ever need to pull more out, I do have more.
That's great. And we have comment boxes on our on the podcast. So if people have questions and want more, they can leave a comment once this podcast goes live. But I love those, and I think those are so great things that companies can continue to do. And it doesn't mean you have to take a side. It just means really supporting everyone in an organization and defining what is DEI for your organization. How do you want employees to view that within the organization that you run or that you work for? And it's just basic. It's just a simple, we don't need to overcomplicate it. So these are great tips and things that companies can put into action pretty quickly. One last question for you. I like to end every podcast getting or asking the same question to our guests and really getting career tips from people. I think it's always interesting, and it doesn't have to be about the topic we're talking about, but I think it's always interesting to hear people's perspectives who have been in the workplace for a number of years. What is the number one tip, if you could share advice with our audience? What is the number one tip you would share in terms of career?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and this is going to really be off topic, but it kind of aligns with everything. But I always say celebrate you. And I know that probably doesn't sound like a career tip, but I think people should take time to recognize their wins, even small ones, right? Because a lot of times we get caught up in thinking someone else should celebrate us, but we can celebrate ourselves. And so early in my career, I had a little ritual where every time I finished a big task or a project, I treat myself to chocolate. And so it was sort of my way of saying, you did that, right? And so, and it makes the journey more fun when you're celebrating yourself and you have like a ritual. It could be chocolate, but it can be anything you like, right? I've had too much chocolate over the years, but so, I've switched to a little bit healthier options like, my favorite fruit or something. But the idea is to just reward yourself and stay encouraged, and just don't wait for someone else to acknowledge your progress, because our growth deserves like confetti every now and then, right? And so I think for me, that's good career tip, because if someone doesn't celebrate me, I may be down and feel like, oh, they didn't celebrate me. But if I celebrate myself, then it
It
makes my
changes your
journey.
whole perspective.
It does. It
Yeah.
does.
That's great, and that's something that we have not heard from anybody before with this question. And so that's the idea of asking this question, because there's a different perspective from everybody. And I think we get so wrapped up in the day to day of how to be successful, and we're always trying to get to that next level and one up ourselves and one up, the team, whatever it is to get to that next level. And you're right, there's simple things you can do every day, every action that you take, that you can step back and say, I did that, and that is an accomplishment. So that is an awesome tip, and hopefully one that our listeners will take action on. I think that's a great way to end this conversation, and I so appreciate you joining us today. And you are one in a million, Victoria. I'm so lucky to work with you and to have you on this team, and look forward to future conversations. We'd love to have you back as a guest in the future. And then for our listeners, thank you for joining us today. And if you have a topic that we have not covered in the past that you'd like us to pick up, please mention it in the comments, and we will add that to our list. And that's it for today. So thank you, Victoria.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you next time.